Hello.
Hey, Hayden, how are you?
Very good, thank you, Scott. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Just let
Good.
me plug in my headphones. It'll probably get better sound.
Yeah.
And that should do it. You hear me okay?
Yeah, it's good. Good quality.
Okay, great.
What's happening? What are you up to?
Oh, I was just doing some research. I just finished an article for another site, launching a project on the weekend, so writing a few articles for various sites on it. So just finished that and then back to my research for a bit.
And what are you
So,
researching at the moment?
uh, I research different things. I just got done a segment on training, and now I'm in reading a sports psychology text. So
Nice one.
seems a little bit redundant to stuff I've done in the past, but doesn't hurt to reinforce.
Of
So
course not.
yeah.
Scott, basically today we're just going to be talking about your career in the fitness industry and now even like moving into still in the fitness industry, more like that psychological and mindset stuff that you're pretty well known for these days. Sort of how you've done some of your online product promotion and creation and where the ideas came from and sort of how you were, I guess, one of the leaders when all the stuff started coming out and just embraced it and got it out there. And I just want to talk about some of these upcoming projects that you've got going on, and you just mentioned how you're writing for different article databases or whatever to help get the word out. I think that's really important for new trainers to hear about. My audience is predominantly new trainers and
Okay.
just fitness people in general that don't really know where to start as far as online promotions and getting their name out there, and a little bit scared of maybe like negative feedback from others, and just trying to change that mind shift for them that they can put out YouTube videos and they can put out podcasts and they can live the life they want to and be popular online and share that knowledge that they've got. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm the right guy to ask about all the digital world. I usually hire people out for that, but I guess we can
Well, that's
even
cool
discuss
too.
that. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm a bit of a digital moron, but uh, I'm a fitness expert. So some of the things I've talked about in the past have to do with following one of those two paths and maybe not both of them. And at some point, they actually intersect. So
Yeah, no stress.
we can talk about that for sure.
Cool, man. Well, welcome aboard. Welcome on the show. Scott, why don't we just give the audience a quick rundown on your history and sort of who you are and what you've been doing. I know you've been in the industry for 4+ decades and coached hundreds, if not thousands, of sporting personalities and bodybuilding experts and fitness girls and whatnot. But let's just give the audience a quick rundown on who Scott Abel is.
Yeah, 4 decades. So I'm old now. I don't have a problem saying that because I think one of the things you learn in any industry, I study a lot of icons in other industries as well, and you see a lot of emergent trends. And one of them that just popped to mind was Warren Buffett, and he talks a lot about the wisdom that comes with experience that. We can get into this later, but I think one of the caveats right now in the fitness industry is for newbies, they're all pursuing information as a form of knowledge, and information isn't really knowledge without the knowledge filter itself. And one of the things you get through experience is one of those intangible things where you got that gut feeling of just knowing what the direction is, knowing what to do and stuff. But background-wise, typical Canadian kid. Started out, back in the 60s. I lived across the street from a schoolyard, so the playground. So basically, we're outside all the time. So whatever was seasonal, that's what we were doing. Football, hockey, baseball, soccer, frisbee. Anything that was outside, you did it. And years later came to realize the importance of having that kind of athletic development background goes a long way to what's called neural learning. And people that don't have that, especially in this modern day and age, people that grow up playing video games instead of playing actual games, they can be actually thwarted in terms of trying to get their fitness results because of a lack of that previous background in any kind of activity. So, I did all that. I was very active, and then I went to school and pursued, undergrad and graduate degrees. I did very well. I won lots of scholarships for being a pretty smart cookie. During doing that, I was also, getting into bodybuilding, even though my education was in a completely different field. That also ended up helping me because it made me very distinct in the way I coach clients and things like that, which, you come to realize all this stuff later on what was a plus and what was a minus and all these things. So I started doing bodybuilding and realizing that the typical answers didn't apply to me. So it was a bit of that early learning experience that everything everyone was writing about. Usually people write about what works for them and then try to say that works for everybody. And it wasn't working for me. This whole myth of train heavy to get big, all it did for me was left me injured and frustrated. So I kind of started doing my own thing, and I ended up, being very, 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 with a capital, very successful, not just myself, but in training other people. This, before the days of the internet, you couldn't create a reputation for being good. You either were or you weren't. And I wasn't good. I was great. So I got lots and lots of people. I ended up getting a job with Joe Waiter at Muscle Camp back in 1989, and that kind of changed my life. I talk about this a lot, but Bill Pearl took me under his wing. He's an icon in the industry for people that don't know, and he became my mentor, and it just kind of grew from there. And then all my clients were winning, every contest around. And so, my knowledge started to expand, and then the reputation started to expand. And then, I started going my own way in different kinds of research, because I was noticing there was also a downside of the industry that no one was addressing or talking about. So I wrote a book called Metabolic Damage and the Dangers of Dieting, and I've kind of like taken a few approaches of looking at the darker side of the industry when all this stuff becomes an obsession. There's a huge consequence to that. So I kind of spent some time writing about that, writing about eating disorders that competition causes. And now I've come back full circle, and I'm back into, I've always loved fitness and the things the body can do. So I'm back into that, and have a new project coming out along those lines. And so it's just been a great career of always sort of being one step ahead of whatever the trend is, without necessarily trying to be one step ahead. I've just always had a penchant for being able to see what's next before other people can. So I think a lot of the times people are so caught up in following the herd, like whatever's popular this year or next year, that's what all the trainers are trying to do. So they're all followers. And when you do that, you're only getting yourself available to sharing a very small slice of a very small pie. But if you're out in front and you're the leader, then you can sort of create and get other people following, a new trend, a better trend, a real trend, that kind of thing. Because a lot of the fitness trends and the diet industry trends, unfortunately, are bogus. They're just, formed in popularity rather than reality. It's the old, sell people the sizzle, not the steak kind of thing. And that still goes on in the industry. So you get a lot of people following some others because others are well marketed, and they sell a lot of false promises, and then when those promises don't pan out, then of course it's the consumer's fault. It's not the fault of the creator of whatever program or whatever. So there's a lot of that in the industry as well, and I try not to get involved in any of that. I try to stay out in front with my own stuff, and I always figure that being this experienced and being this intelligent in the industry, that if I find something interesting and worth pursuing, then chances are there's going to be a lot of other people who are going to find it interesting and worth pursuing too. And I kind of build a clientele that way. So I don't really consider it about having a quantity of followers so much as a loyal quality of followers, and that's what I've been able to build. So it's worked well. I've always said to people in my workshops and stuff that I've been able to live a semi-retired lifestyle for the last 25 years. So I think a lot of people in this day and age would kill to have a lifestyle like I have. So, but that comes from setting it up, to begin with. So you realize, what you want to do and how you want to do it. And I think a lot of that came from my early days, in my physique transformation days, where I realized I had to have a certain amount of time set aside for training and being able to recover from that. So I was like, okay, how do I design a professional life that allows me to do that and still, create the kind of earning lifestyle that I want to enjoy? So, I was able to do that. A lot of that had to do with my education and a lot of other things. But, I've always been into work hard and work smart, and that doesn't necessarily always mean work long. So I think that's the dilemma for a lot of personal trainers, because I coach a lot of personal trainers, and their dilemma is that to be a successful personal trainer is a very labor-intensive job. So, to be successful, they have to work longer and longer hours at the expense of their own, passion for fitness and their own fitness level and stuff like that. And they get caught in that dilemma of success versus, time to enjoy what you actually love doing. So there's a real caveat in that, I think.
And how would you suggest for new trainers to find that balance between working harder, working smarter? Is there any quick wins that we can sort of get on the board for those transitions?
Well, you have to have the right kind of clientele, and let me back up a little bit first. The fact that personal training, that's not what I do. I'm not a personal trainer. I'm an online coach. So what I do for a living is I write programs, I write diet strategies, I assign them to clients, and we exchange email, kind of like what you and I are doing by Skype. Cool. So it's not labor intensive. It's creatively intensive. So I don't work long. I work short little periods of time. That allows me to deal with a lot more people on a global level. Whereas if you're a personal trainer, you have to deal with people on a local level. And so you're already picking from a very limited potential population, right? And when something gets popular, it gets diluted. You take CrossFit, for instance. If you weren't the first to open a CrossFit place, and now all these other little personal trainer studios open around you, you're all competing for the same demographic at the same money. And what happens there is, what people try to do then is they make their cost levels cheaper. So come and join our gym. It's this much a month, whereas they're charging this much a month. And what you do there is the equivalent of shooting yourself in the foot. And Warren Buffett talks about this a lot as well in terms of the investment business. The people who have short-term mindsets tend to think only about what's going to work right now and not how that's going to damage them 2 or 3 years from now. So I see a lot of people, for instance, they'll open these training facilities and they'll start with boot camps. And they think it's a great idea. If you have a boot camp, you can train more people for less money. But, there's an old saying that we teach people what we're worth. And if you start selling your services for less and less amount of money, then you're telling people that's what you're worth. So, when you're selling something at $5, $10 a session, you're basically creating a McFitness environment for yourself. So unless you have a real huge demographic to choose from, you're going to find yourself in a few short years either overworked or out of business because you've cheapened your own value. Whereas I have a colleague of mine who runs a personal training studio out of his house, and he's never done boot camps, he's never done classes. He does one-to-one personal training at a very high hourly rate, and he only attracts corporate heads, dentists, surgeons, and they all talk by word of mouth. And these are people who make $1,000 an hour or whatever, so disposable income isn't really an issue for them. And he gets them as clients, and he says, this is what I charge because this is what I'm worth. Yes. And, you know, I've always said in my workshop explaining this to people, because personal training is a struggling industry in terms of income. People don't really understand that, but if you look up the numbers, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's really quite terrible. And I've always said, look, there's always going to be people who want a Four Seasons, High's Steakhouse, Morton's of Chicago Steakhouse experience, or a Four Seasons hotel experience, and there's always going to be people who want the McDonald's experience or the Burger King experience and the Hotel 6 experience, and there's always going to be people who don't know the difference. So what I've always done is I want the people who want the Four Seasons experience. I want the people who have the disposable income to want the best. Now, what that means is you have to work hard, of course, to provide a service that makes you the best, that makes you stand out as a Four Seasons or, you know, a High Steakhouse where people are going to pay $200 for a meal or whatever. It's the same thing in this industry. We teach people what we're worth long term, but at some point you have to actually prove that as well. So the problem with personal trainers is when they start competing with other personal trainers and they're not separating themselves at all, they're competing for the same McDollar of the consumer, and the only way to improve there is to up their volume, and they often think by doing that is to train more people for less money. And then what they end up doing is shooting themselves in the foot, because they're ended up working harder and harder with more and more people for less and less money, but also creating less and less value in what they do. So, you know, the fact that I created myself as an exclusive, it costs a lot of money to be with me as a coaching client, and it's an exclusivity that people either want or they don't want. And the fact is, if people can't afford me, I don't want them anyway. You know, so that's the kind of, you have to create that kind of level for yourself and decide where you want to be in the industry. So, but if you look up, you know, incomes of personal trainers and stuff, and even marketing courses, there's a few real cheesy marketing courses out there where you get bombarded with emails from people, you know, come join our course and earn 6 figures a year personal training. Okay, well, for one, 6 figures a year for me isn't a lot of money. But 6 figures a year for a personal trainer, if you're working 80 hours a week, I don't know if that's a reasonable trade-off. So, you know, you have to look at if the ends justify the means. So, you know, like I said, early in my career, I was always in front of that. I was always like, okay, I want to be able to have this certain lifestyle of freedom. You know, how am I going to go about doing that? And for me, it was being a coach rather than a trainer. And if you look at things like NFL football or whatever, you know, they have trainers who strength and condition the players, but the coach is the one that makes millions and millions of dollars. So, you know, I've always said a coach contains personal training. The online fitness coach contains personal training, but the opposite isn't true. A personal trainer doesn't necessarily mean someone's a coach. So, you know, a coach takes in account a lot more things than just diet and training. You're actually coaching the person, not the program and not the diet. And you have to be good at that. And, you know, my background in my education and early years career in social work, I think, really molded that for me, that I was always good at reading people and dealing with people and communicating with people. And you can't just talk fitness at people. You have to talk with people and share with people and get them, you know, get them active on their own behalf, kind of thing. So there's a huge difference between being an online coach and being a local personal trainer.
I find a lot of people tend to use those terms interchangeably. So just whatever's hot at the moment, I'm a coach. You know.
Yeah.
I find that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, strength and conditioning coach used to be the buzzword back in my early days, and then it came to not mean a whole lot. And now you have all these training specialists. I'm a functionalist trainer. I'm certified with this group and that group. And I'm always suspicious of people with a lot of letters beside their name or a lot of certifications on their wall, because it doesn't take all that to be really good. But you're right. A lot of people use the term coach really loosely. I don't. It's a big word for me. And matter of fact, in my book, The Abel Approach, I talk about the difference between what I call a little C coach and a big C coach, capital C coach. And again, that difference is a coach coaches people, not programs. And I coach within what I call the triangle of awareness, which is an equally sided balance between mental, emotional, and physical behavioral states, and where the obstructions and limits to progress, where that lies in somebody. For one person, it might be emotional. They got an eating disorder, for instance. For someone else, it might be mental. They have a stinking thinking problem. And for other people, it might be just in the physical barriers that they just have too much life stressors going on and affects them physically and whatnot. So there's these things that go into the realm of coaching that don't necessarily go into the realm of personal training. Another difference as well is in being able to design programs and diet strategies that fit the people. I make the program fit the client. I don't make the client fit the program. And there's a lot of lip service paid to that as well. But, I started going back to a gym now and I watch the personal trainers, and it's really a comedy of errors. There's no programming going on. It's the client comes in and they do a bunch of exercises and then they leave. And that's what I call the McDonald's personal training experience, that people don't even know what they're paying for. And the trainers there, I've always said real experts don't work in gyms, because the gym could never afford me, because I would never give 70% of what I'm bringing into the gym, and then I keep the 30%. I mean, that's really low level expertise that you would give away your expertise that way. But getting back to my point, watching these trainers in the gym, I've always said a collection of exercises doesn't mean an effective workout, and a collection of workouts doesn't necessarily mean an effective program. So, but that's what goes on the gym floor with most of the personal training stuff, sort of this, slot the people into whatever you feel like doing today, and see you next time. Well, that's not programming, and it's certainly not coaching. So there's a really huge, disparity between the personal trainer and the coach, which, like I said earlier, the people who want the exclusivity, high-end experience of something, the people that want the McDonald's level of experience of something, and then the third group of people who don't know the difference. So you can call yourself a coach or a trainer, and they don't know the difference and what that means. But as someone who's wanting to earn a living from the industry, you better know the difference in those terms and how to actualize that difference. So if you do want to be a high-end coach, then at some point you have to create that expertise that other people can relate to, that you are that good. You have to separate yourself from the crowd, and you don't do that by selling yourself at boot camp levels of $10 a session and things like that. That to me makes no sense at all. And it's, like I said, Warren Buffett talks about that as well, of people who trying to get into the financial industry, and they're gone in 2 years because of doing that exact same thing, cheapening their own value by focusing on how they can earn the money, right now. And they forget about, the long-term costs of, being in something that's more and more labor intensive than creatively intensive. So
I think it's put down to a very low barrier of entry to get into the fitness industry, to be honest.
Oh, don't even get me started on that. I've always said that certified doesn't mean qualified. There's courses around here that you go from Saturday morning till Sunday night and you're certified, and then people are on their Facebook page, I'm certified trainer. Any accreditation that you can get in a weekend isn't worth the paper it's written on. And back a few years ago, there were people just trying to make a point. There were people getting their pets certified online in different courses and whatnot. So it becomes a little ridiculous. Like acquaintance of mine was telling me about someone he knew, young lady, like 20, 21, in the mall working retail at a store, a semi-attractive looking girl. So a gym guy's, like, oh, come to work for us or whatever. So, quits that job, which is a low paying job, goes and gets certified for this gym franchise in our area. I won't say which one. And then is on the gym floor having to sell memberships to make it work. But wearing the T-shirt that says, certified personal trainer, has never been in a gym before that weekend certification, and got certified with the help of my acquaintance who was into fitness and basically answered all the questions for her. Doesn't have a clue, barely knows herself how the equipment works, but is on the floor training people, for so many dollars an hour. So if you're someone who actually is passionate about fitness and you're on the gym floor, you should be resentful of that, and that's the only way things are going to change. But yeah, certified certainly doesn't mean qualified. There's just too much of that going on in the industry because it makes money, right? You get certified in this guy's online nutrition course and you call yourself a nutritionist, and you do this and you do that, and of course they're going to put that stuff out because they can charge, some of these courses are a couple $1,000. So you get 1,000 people to join for that, and they never actually even see it through. That's a good way to make an income. But I'm not so sure how effective it is for long term or for creating experts. I mean, we really have to raise the standard base level of what passes for expertise in this industry, because it's really becoming a joke. At least to my with 4 decades of experience, I can see things that a lot of people don't see. Yeah. And, you recognize them right away, and it just makes you shake your head and say, wow, like we just keep bastardizing and vulgarizing, the expertise base by having all these, certifications where if you pay your money, you're certified, basically, which works for the certifying organization. Like I said, gives them a great income. But in terms of real world, hands-on, we're not raising the level of expertise at all, and we should be demanding more of the industry, by not allowing these things. But that's a tough nut to crack.
Of course, man. Scott, how have you stayed ahead? We talked a few times about staying ahead of the curve, and you're always at the forefront of the fitness industry and anything you've sort of gone into. How have you done that?
It's a good question. I think I've done it. I've always had a sixth sense, even in social work. I got promoted really quick for the same kind of thing, being able to see what's ahead and being able to read people. But I think in this industry, one of the things that got me so far ahead and continue to get so far ahead seems counterintuitive, but I don't read or follow any industry experts. I don't really care what they have to say, how they have to say it, and what they're presenting. I realized a long time ago that they're not going to offer anything better than what I offer, even though they offer something different than what I have to offer. So I've always had enough confidence in my own acumen and expertise to rely on that. So, and then it's just about observing people, seeing what the trends are, and seeing how people are falling through the cracks, and then saying, well, I can fill those cracks. For instance, when I was just doing competitors, which I'm, away from that world now, but I was watching the fallout, because I was around before there was figure and fitness and bikini competitions. There wasn't any of that. And then I watched as that exploded in popularity. I watched the fallout of that, which was metabolic damage, eating disorders, things like that no one seemed to be addressing in a real way. They were glorifying the competitive experience, that it's, be all end all wonderful with no downsides. And of course, someone starving themselves for 5 months has all kinds of downsides. So that one seemed like a no-brainer, but doing the research for it was hard because there was no industry-related research for it. So I had to go outside the box and start, talking to university people about, hey, where would I find out about this, and where would I find out about that kind of thing. And then that, once you start going in a different direction, there's so many tangents that come off of that also take you in different directions. So, I didn't set out as a fitness expert to become an expert in eating disorders, but I am one now. So there's all kinds of these other facets that you can pursue, as long as it sort of helps people. And I think the other part for your listeners maybe be interested in is spread your demographic. The more people that you're capable of helping, then the more income you're capable of generating. It's like I said earlier, if you're competing for the same demographic and the same pie as everyone else in your area, let's say, then you're going to be severely limited in your options. So, by becoming an expert in metabolic damage and being the first to write a book about it, and becoming an expert in eating disorders, even though I didn't want to, gives me other options of dealing with people who struggle rather than people who excel at fitness, right? And sort of that kind of opening yourself up, to being good with people rather than just being, tied to the label fitness expert. So that becomes real important. But I'm just thinking as I'm saying that about local competition. I live on in a very small area. It's called the west side of the certain city that I live in, and within that west side, I watched since I've moved here that one gym came up, then another gym came up, then boutique gyms came up, and then a CrossFit came up. 2 more CrossFits came up. Then 2 more personal training studios came up. Well, the area I live in is like 10,000 people, small demographic. And now within 10 minutes of me, there was 9 different places to train if you included personal training studios. Within 2 years, 5 of them were gone. So this is what I'm talking about earlier. If you're competing for the same slice of pie as everyone else, you're diluting all of them. So now none of them are making money because they're trying to get clients by undercutting the gym up the street. Well, when you do that, like I said, you're cheapening your own value. Whereas I would rather be the guy who people are driving miles and miles out of their way to come see, or create that online thing where I have a global market. I'm lucky being a coach that I have clients right now in almost 30 different countries. 24 last time I counted, but so I have a global market fitness wise, and I think again, the bigger the demographic you can expose yourself to, as long as you're good at what you're doing, then the better you're going to make it in the fitness industry. But by selling yourself short, by thinking only of right now, in terms of the things I talked about before, like charging less for sessions and having boot camps and things like that, is really the equivalent of shooting yourself in the foot. You're not going to last too long doing that unless you're part of a big chain.
Well, they're just like we've said the whole episode. They're just going after the same dollar. Yeah.
And you can only split a dollar so many times before do you want to make 2 cents on the dollar? I want to make 80 cents on the dollar. And I'm not even that business savvy. I have people that do my books and all that stuff for me. But like I said, I realized a long time ago that I was never going to get caught in that trap. I was never going to cheapen my own value by telling people, I hear it a couple of times in the gym. You hear it. It sounds like bragging rights where the guy's saying, well, come with me. I'm only $25 a session. He's, that gym's $35 a session. It's like, well, you just undervalued yourself. Like that's not a good thing. So they don't see it. They see it as the immediate, rather than the long term. So at some point you create your own value in your own market. But if your market's already this big and there's 100 other people doing what you're doing, then how do you think you're gonna earn and enhance a living? It's one thing to earn a living, it's another to build on that and enhance it and make it, like myself, 4 decades of constant improvement. A lot of that had to do with leaving the hardcore competitors, because what I realized, not only was it glorified babysitting, but they have no money. So you're chasing people, who have no money, who want your expertise but really can't afford it when all is said and done. So, when other people want to move in and train competitors, I say, go ahead. That's not really my market. My market are people that are going to understand my value without me having to sell it to them, and appreciate what I have to offer. And you can't put a price tag on that. So, when I have one client that's been with me now 26 years. So, at $100 a month, forget what it costs to sign up with me. But at $100 a month over 26 years, that's a lot of money. So, I average 5 or 6 years that clients stay with me and they don't stay if there's no value in that. So, at $100 a month, I keep a certain client level, and then I have all the back end products as well, because I've written 9 books. I have the workout programs that are on video and stuff that people can download, and things like that, and doing shows like this where I can get out there and maybe people hear it and say, oh, I want to talk to this guy, kind of thing. Those things matter, right? They separate you from the rest of the industry. So I think people, they want to think what everyone else is thinking, and they don't realize how limiting that is. So if you can think outside of the box, or not even have a box, then your options are limitless rather than constrained and narrow and narrow and narrower. So.
Scott, we've talked a few times about education and books like Warren Buffett's material and whatnot. Do you have any recommendations as far as books go for PTs that want to start getting into leveling up their expertise?
Not particularly, because my tastes are weird. I find value in books that have nothing to do with the industry, and because my foundation is the industry, I'll always be able to relate what I'm reading to the industry. Whether it's I read Einstein's biography, which was like 600 pages or whatever, and I found pages and pages of stuff that I could blog about that was relevant to the fitness industry that maybe other people wouldn't see or consider. But again, I think what people have to do is expose themselves to relevance. In other words, look at something, and if it touches you, then it's going to touch someone else. And if it touches you enough that it sounds important, then pursue it and make it important. A lot of people need to be told what's important and what matters. The worst thing a personal trainer can do is go to the bookstore and walk up and down the diet section and walk up and down the training section, because all you're going to get is regurgitated stuff that's been passed down, over and over again. So to look for the unique stuff, that's the hard thing to do. I think for me, I look for, I'm a little biased that way, but I look for, if someone doesn't have a PhD beside their name, then I'm going to be a little hesitant of reading anything industry-wise. So I look for that, and I look for people whose names I don't know in the industry. If I don't know their names, and I read the jacket of who's endorsing the book, for me that becomes relevant. If I'm reading something and it's endorsed by Harvard Medical School or Harvard Nutritional School, then I'm gonna look at the table of contents and see if that's something I want to read. But if it's endorsed by, Shape magazine, then I'm probably going to skip it. So, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, but there's also the critical thinking element. I was blessed in pursuit of my master's degree. The course I hated the most at the time was a course in critical thinking and methodology, where you had to break down studies and learn how to critique them and what was wrong with them, what was right with them, what was incomplete with them. I hated that course because I'm not a stats guy. I'm more of a theoretical guy. But all these years later, I realized the value of that, because I can see what's missing in other people's industry logic, whereas what sounds logical to someone else is missing so much stuff to me, because I'm a trained critical thinker because of that course. So that really helps me as well. But like I said, one of the things I would advise is I don't read industry stuff by industry names. I just don't, because I realize a lot of it is just going to be muckety muck, and it's not going to be anything that I haven't read before. It's just going to be, like I said, there's nothing new. There's only newly interpreted in terms of the principles and stuff. So I try to go, keep myself into the more academic side of it, and then use my experience base, because I have dealt with thousands and thousands of clients, so I have a huge experience base when I'm reading something, to use it and make it relevant. So I go the academic route, which You don't find the academic route by doing Google searches under fitness umbrella. You just don't. What you find there is a lot of marketing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And Scott, we talked about Bill Pearl taking you under his wing and doing some work with Joe Weider and whatnot. Have you had any other mentors that have really helped shape your life and you know?
Sure. Yeah, I've been remiss in previous interviews. I get asked the question a lot, and Bill Pearl's the one I always use. The other one, which wasn't as personal as Bill Pearl, was Fred Hatfield, Dr. Squat. That was more academic. I did go to a few of his symposiums, and we did, I was at social events with him and stuff, but just being exposed to his level of automatic knowledge and the way he could present it was something very stirring as well. And then outside the industry, the one I keep forgetting is my academic advisor for my undergrad and graduate thesis was a lady who had written several books and stuff, and I had never been around someone of that kind of intellectual acumen before, and she had a profound effect on me as well, mostly in terms of me believing in my own intellectual prowess. I was kind of like a fish out of water at university. I didn't really feel like I belonged there. I had the smarts, but didn't know I had the smarts. And I wouldn't say she took me under her wing so much as she was fascinated by my personal background, my story, and things like that. And then, she taught me how to write and how to investigate and how to be a critical thinker. And I think, in the past I've been remiss leaving that out because it had nothing to do with fitness, but I realized she was also, a real important mentor because I always wanted to, first time in my life, and probably before or after, other than Bill Pearl, first person I really wanted to impress with my work. Mm-hmm. Like I was really seeking her approval, right? Whereas, I haven't done that much since. Other people's approval doesn't really motivate me or interest me at all. So, but that was certainly a big one for a young guy, in his early 20s, trying to figure it all out, kind of thing. These were really, really important people. Same thing when Bill Pearl announced to that room of people from all over the world that there was a person in the room who was going to change fitness, and when he finally finished his rambling about it and said my name, I was as shocked as anyone else, because at that point I was still the guy trying to figure it out, whereas he then was where I am now with, decades and decades of experience, where you see, you can see the field, right? And you see the people who are rising in that field, and you can see it, and you can just point it out. And that's what he did, and, said my name. And it was like, that was like a springboard for me. That was all I needed to hear. Like when I got that job to go to muscle camp locally in the city I lived in, everyone was backbiting at me, like, oh, wait till he gets down there. Guys like him are a dime a dozen, he'll get eaten alive and yada yada. And then I get down there, and one of the biggest icons in the whole fitness industry, points me out as someone who's going to be a leader in the industry and change things. Well, going back to my own city after that, I didn't have anything to prove to anybody. I could care less what they said about me, or, I had just got reinforcement from someone who never had to reinforce anybody. But I got royal treatment the whole time I was there. Joe Gold took a liking to me. People probably don't know, founder of Gold's Gym and World's Gym. Yeah. And I got treated with red carpet treatment. So it was the opposite of what my small town thinking people around me, what I call the ankle biters in the peanut gallery now, it was the opposite of what they thought. Because down there they had respect for something that was instantly recognizable. And I had quite a distinct physique for that time, in the late 80s and stuff. And when I got down there, I got treated like a movie star. It was the exact opposite of how people in my town prognosticated it was going to be. So that gave me all the confidence in the world to just go, what I've been doing, and then I realized when I went there to learn, I was attending all these classes with Fred Hatfield and the rest, and I was amazed that all they were doing was reviewing the research, which is something I had already been doing for years as a student. Like I spent all my free time in medical libraries and stuff, like researching exercise and all this stuff. And I got down there, and they're bringing up the same studies I've already brought up, and that was expertise. Well, to me, I was expecting something deeper and bigger and more, like something that was going to hit me in the head like a hammer. And what hit me in the head like a hammer was the fact that I was already doing everything that these well-known experts were doing. I had already been doing that on the same level. So it really gave me a lot of confidence to come back and say, you know what, keep doing what you're doing. And then, like I said, from there, all my clients, when your clients are winning every show in a local area, and dominating, like not just winning, but dominating, that kind of word of mouth travels fast. And, that's how I ended up with Robert Kennedy and stuff. So, and that was an interesting story too. He initially heard about me from my exploits in California, even though I ended up living like just a few miles down the road from Muscle Mag. So he never connected the two until we actually finally met. And then, that was an interesting story itself. So, yeah, a lot of little, I mean, anybody who's a success has little, intangible stories that all sort of connect over the years, right? And turn it into something, that explains it all, kind of thing, right?
One thing I've noticed throughout our whole interview is that you're very wary that this is a long game, and it's not just, I'm going to train people for 12 months and then be an industry leader and whatnot. Like you've seen the transition from your experience and the decades in the industry, rather than just jumping in and thinking you're going to make quick cash, because that's just not how it works.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, like any of those late night infomercials for real estate, right? Make quick cash. Like, how many of the millions of people who buy that make a dime? Like none. And it's the same thing with whoever buys the fitness program and whatnot. And there's a huge online presence for that kind of, fantasy as well, that, become an expert in the fitness industry, join with us and we'll tell you how to get clients and we'll tell you how to do this. But it's way more complicated than that. You first of all, you've got to be good with people. You just have to be good with people. And, a fitness knowledge has layers of depth to it. That a lot of people will never understand. So in terms of certification, I said in one of my books, the problem in this industry is people pursue information an inch deep but a mile wide, whereas the real experts pursue information an inch wide but a mile deep. And it's a slower process, but that's the only way you're truly ever going to understand the operating principles that are involved. And that's what makes someone really, really good. The difference between, I always use the professional sports example, but the difference between a coach in the NFL who makes millions and millions of dollars and a high school coach isn't that one of them knows the rule book better than the other one. It's the fact that they understand the nuance of the game on a level that can't be compared, and that's what real expertise is. So, but yeah, I mean, I've watched it change, especially now with the internet and everything, and the way people can represent expertise that they don't really have, and that becomes a real caveat for the consumer as well, I think. So. But it's like anything else, right? Caveat emptor, buyer beware kind of thing. When you're purchasing fitness expertise online, be careful where you're getting it. And if you're a personal trainer looking to aspire, to have a career in this, then you better look past next month and that kind of thing, and not sell yourself short. Create value in your expertise. Don't bastardize your own value. That just makes no sense to me, to sell yourself cheaper. That just I don't get that mentality, but that's the mentality that exists right now. Sell cheaper sessions to more people. Well, and all you're telling people from there is now you're only worth $10 a session. You're not going to last too long in an industry trying to do that. But like I said, that's what I call Mick Fitness. Yeah. So, yeah.
Awesome, man. Scott, this has been awesome, and I really respect your knowledge and experience in the industry. How about you give the audience a way to get in touch with you and connect with you, man?
Sure. Yeah, I have two websites. ScottAbel.com, Scott Abel Coaching, but the newest one, Scott Abel Fitness, ScottAbelFitness.com. That one's new because if they go there, they can, if they opt in, then they get a couple chapters from a couple of my books, one of the diet books and one of the and my program design book, The Able Approach. So they'll get free chapters by opting in there. And a new project coming out this coming weekend called the Hard Gainer Solution, whereas we could have got more into that, I guess, specifically, but this was more general. I started looking at, over the last 10 years, people who seem to do all the right things and have no physique to show for it. Mm-hmm. And as I told you when you called, I was just finishing an article on that very thing for another website, and I realized that this isn't an individual thing; it's a demographic, unique unto itself. And so often in the industry, what experts study is what stimulates muscle growth and development, and what they haven't been studying is what limits and obstructs it. So for me, I've started looking into what limits and obstructs muscle growth and development for what I call the hard gainer demographic, because they share a lot of things in common. So I started looking into that, and I really designed a diet strategy and a training protocol specifically for what I call the hard gainer trainee demographic. And that project's coming out in a couple days on Amazon. So I'm looking forward to getting that out there because, again, it's another niche, I think, that people have talked about with lip service, but no one's really addressed specifically as a methodology. So once again, that's another example of me being one step ahead of the curve, because I'm sure once this comes out, everybody and their brother will jump on it, and they'll all be hard gainer experts in another year, right? But again, you're chasing the leader when you do that. But I'm excited about the project and it was just one of those things that dawned on me again. Like, this was not only a niche that wasn't being filled, but to identify the hard gainer as a demographic unto itself rather than an individual issue, right? And the article I just wrote, I talked about the best training partner I ever had doing my programs with me at the same level of intensity as me at a time when other pros couldn't stay with me for more than 20 minutes, but he never had the physique to show for it. So if it was all about the fact that, because I designed a program that worked for me and I had a world-class physique, and he, if he was following it, then he should have saw something from it. That was a limitation of my own thinking. That was what I call paradigm blindness of my own. Never considered that his specific genetics might be a whole different demographic, and that's what I've kind of labeled the hard gainer demographic. And so the workouts need to cater specifically for that in terms of recovery, more so than what stimulates muscle growth, which the old myth, train for strength and development will come. That's like one of the oldest myths out there that just isn't true. So there's all that in it, but it's called the Hard Gainer Solution, and that comes out late this weekend.
Awesome. Well, make sure you shoot me the link, because I'd love to put that up on the show notes. Scott, thanks so much for joining us, man. It's really cool.
It's been a pleasure. If you ever want to have me back, just let me know.
Always keen for that. So sounds good.
Cheers.
All right. See you, brother.